Hey everybody, it's time to talk about what else I saw in August in light of what happened with last month's What Else I Saw video, which was about 10 minutes longer than I wanted and was an absolute nightmare to film and edit. I'm going to try to curb my commentary on the movies this time. We'll see how it goes. I think I've said this exact same thing before. Movie number 1 from 2010 is The Way Back. Set in 1940, this is the story of a group of prisoners attempting to escape a Soviet gulag. It's partly a prison escape movie, but it's also a survival movie, as the path to freedom takes the group through the frozen forest of Siberia, the desert of Mongolia, and the Himalayas. The cast includes Jim Sturgis, Ed Harris, Saoirse Ronan, Colin Farrell, and Mark Strong. Supposedly, it's based on a true story, although I did read somewhere that there's some doubt about that. But whether or not it's true, it's a good movie, especially if, like me, you like survival movies. It's well acted and engaging, and spares no punches when it comes to the brutality of the journey. Movie number 2 is 2018's Rampage. An experimental gene-altering gas comes crashing down to Earth and causes 3 animals to mutate and go on a destructive rampage. Yeah, this isn't a brilliant movie, and I wasn't expecting it to be. It's the kind of thing where it's best if you just shut your brain off before you start watching. Even then, there were a couple times when I'd start to say, wait a minute, how does that work? Or, what about this thing? And then I'd have to remind myself to stop trying to apply logic. The script has a lot of weaknesses, some of the effects look low budget, it's corny, and the villains are incredibly cartoonish, but I'd be lying if I said my mom and I didn't find it entertaining. Dwayne Johnson and Jeffrey Dean Morgan are both so incredibly likable that I just couldn't help enjoying myself in spite of all the absurdity. Movie number 3 is 1945's Paris Underground, which is also known as Madame Pimpernel. My sister found this movie on YouTube and recommended that we check it out, and I'm really glad she did because I liked it a lot. Constance Bennett, who also produced the film, stars as a rich, rather irresponsible American woman whose marriage to a French diplomat is on the rocks. She and her British companion, played by Gracie Fields, attempts to flee Paris before the invading Germans arrive, but they're unable to get out in time. Though they are both unlikely candidates to work for the Underground, when they come across an RAF flyer who needs to be smuggled out of the country, they take on the job. I'm not going to say any more because I went into it knowing next to nothing and found it very suspenseful, and I want the same for you if you decide to watch it, which you should if you think it sounds interesting. This was a good one. Movie number 4 is 2006's Rescue Dawn. Set in the early days of the Vietnam War, this movie casts Christian Bale as Dieter Dengler, a pilot on a top-secret bombing mission whose plane crashes in the jungle. He gets picked up by the Viet Cong, tortured, and taken to a prisoner camp where 5 other prisoners are being held in squalid conditions, waiting for a release that never comes. Dengler is eager to escape, but not everyone is willing to get on board. Still, he has an irrepressible spirit and refuses to give up the idea. His optimism and pluckiness in the face of everything that happens, along with a satisfying resolution, gives this particular Vietnam movie an atypical positivity, though the movie is not without its grimness and misery. Bale is as dedicated here as he is in all his performances, and his co-star Steve Zahn is especially good in one of his more serious roles. Movie number 5 is I Am Dragon from 2015. This is a Russian film, sort of an alternative take on the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale, except the guy sometimes turns into a dragon. I am not really a big fantasy person, and I don't care for dragons much, so it took some warming up to. It's a very artistic, colorful film with a different interpretation of material that's been through many variations. I did get kind of a Twilighty vibe from it. I mean, look at the guy. He looks like a model when he isn't a murderous dragon. Naturally, when he transforms back into a person, he doesn't have any clothes on, so there's that. Plus, they're on an island, so he goes around shirtless a lot anyway. Oh, and she isn't allowed to touch him because the physical contact will trigger a transformation and he'll kill her. Of course. So all that made me roll my eyes, but it has its good points. The protagonist, who I didn't care for at first, had good character growth and an appealingly humorous attitude about things, which I liked, and the relationship had some cute moments. Movie number 6 is Return to Me from 2000. This is a charming romantic comedy starring David Duchovny and Minnie Driver. Driver is the recipient of Duchovny's wife's heart after she is killed in a tragic accident. A year later, they meet, and there's an instant spark, but neither knows how they're already connected. I know it sounds like some heavy stuff for a rom-com, and it does have some very sad moments, but it's also funny and romantic. The leads are very appealing, and the supporting cast is great too, including Carol O'Connor, Robert Loggia, who I loved here, Bonnie Hunt, who also wrote and directed, David Alan Grier, and Jim Belushi. I do feel like a lot of the climactic drama could have been avoided. It's one of those things where it's like, just tell them already. The longer you conceal the truth, the harder it's gonna be. You're just making it worse. But if they didn't have all that, then where would the major conflict come from? Movie number 7 is The Final Countdown from 1980. No, not like the song that came out a few years later. This is kind of a World War II movie. An aircraft carrier in 1980 goes through some sort of time warp, and the crew find themselves transported to 1941, just hours before the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. This is another one of those movies where you really shouldn't think too hard, especially since it involves time travel, which will make your head explode if you analyze the implications too closely. I think my dad thought it was kinda silly, but regardless of whether everything made perfect sense, I thought it was a lot of fun. It had some cool effects, an interesting premise, a good cast including Kirk Douglas, Martin Sheen, James Ferrantino, Catherine Ross, and Charles Durning, and the execution of the classic ethical dilemma of whether or not it would be right to interfere with history gave the movie an entertaining twist. Movie number 8 is Brainstorm from 1965. I was pretty excited to find out this was going to air on Turner Classic Movies last week at the tail end of a day devoted to Dana Andrews. It's a psychological thriller starring Jeffrey Hunter as a man who saves his boss's wife from a suicide attempt. They end up falling in love, and to free her from her miserable marriage, he decides to kill her husband and feign insanity in order to avoid a guilty charge. I wanted to see this one because a couple years ago, when I went on a Jeffrey Hunter bender on YouTube, I saw a couple clips from it and thought it looked like he had some good acting moments. I wasn't disappointed. He is fine to look at, but he also shows he's got acting chops. Anne Francis co-stars as the boss's troubled wife, and Dana Andrews plays the boss. Andrews is good here, as he always was, although his character is bad, twisted, and malevolent. In some ways this was very 60s, but in other ways it was like a film noir, which was interesting. It's a tense movie with a conclusion that is satisfyingly disturbing. Movie number 9 is 2018's The 1517 to Paris. This movie is about the 3 American men who stopped an attempted terrorist attack on a train to Paris in 2015. The actions these men took to save lives were heroic and are worthy of recognition, and I respect Clint Eastwood for wanting to feature them in a film. Unfortunately, the movie's not very good. The guys play themselves, which was a risky gamble. They do the best they can, but, well, they're not actors. But I actually think the script is the worst thing about the movie. The attack itself doesn't take up very much time, so most of the movie is padding to make it feature-length. This filler felt unnecessary and dull, and most of the dialogue is just awful, unrealistic, unnatural. Even the real actors struggle to give convincing performances, and the attempts at character development and foreshadowing just feel contrived. I would much rather have seen a documentary or a docudrama with the guys and maybe some other key players sitting and talking naturally to a camera about their lives and the incident, with maybe some reenactment added in. It's too bad it turned out this way because the true story itself is really good. This just wasn't the right treatment. Movie number 10 is Their Finest from 2017. I had pretty low expectations for this World War II movie about a woman, played by Gemma Arterton, who takes a job as assistant screenwriter of a propaganda film about Dunkirk. I don't know, there's something about the cover design that really put me off. The title doesn't grab me. Plus, I don't know what was going on with 2017 and the oversaturation with Dunkirk movies, but I enjoyed it more than I expected to. It has quite a modern handling of the time period with very little attempt at subtlety, but once the filming the film within the film process got going, I got into it. There were two aspects I especially enjoyed. One was Bill Nighy's character, the aging actor who refuses to admit he's past his prime. The other was the American war hero who the government insists on putting in the film to encourage American involvement in the war. He looks great, but they soon find out he can't act, which is a situation that of course generates a lot of humor. Movie number 11 is 2017's The Greatest Showman. My mom's been wanting to see this musical starring Hugh Jackman as P.T. Barnum pretty much ever since it came out last December. Although the anachronistic music style threw her off a bit, she was happy enough with it because she's a nice, wonderful, giving person who never gets too critical about movies. I, on the other hand, didn't enjoy it much. I thought it was predictable, superficial. The vocals are fine, but so many songs sound so similar, with the same structure, the same message, a pattern that gets monotonous when repeated so frequently. The choreography struck me as generic and too busy in the ensemble numbers. The script is also kind of all over the place. Barnum acts like a jerk a few times, and people get upset, as they should, but it never lasts long before all is forgiven and we're singing yet another upbeat, empowering song. Plus, there's the fact that if you look up any of this stuff, you find that a lot of it was made up for the movie, which is annoying, but anyway, yeah, it just didn't do it for me. My mom and I did agree, though, that, as always, watching Hugh Jackman sing and dance was a highlight. He's obviously having a great time, and his energy and enthusiasm are infectious. And I guess I would listen to the song Never Enough again. Even though it's comically incongruous as a song a famous opera singer would perform for her 1850 American stage debut, which I'm not supposed to think about because all the music is like that, it is one of the few songs that isn't an uplifting, inspiring pop song, and it has a little more raw emotion to it, so it stands out. So there you have it, folks. Those are the movies that I watched this past month. To be honest, I'm actually filming this on Friday the 31st, so there is a possibility that there will be another movie to add. I will try to film that. Movie number 12 is Extinction. This is a movie that just came out a few weeks ago on Netflix. I wasn't super interested in it because it sounded pretty run-of-the-mill to me, but my brother and my mom wanted to watch it, so I came along. It's an alien film that stars Michael Pena as a man plagued with horrifying dreams and visions of a coming alien invasion. It's hard to talk about this one because there's a huge twist partway through that changes everything. Where I'd originally been thinking that some things about the movie were kind of strange and the plot seemed fairly typical, that twist forced me to reevaluate all of my first impressions. It was interesting. It started out one thing and then turned into another. I'm still mulling it over. So that's about all I can say about that one. Let me know your thoughts on any of the movies that I mentioned in the comments down below. I look forward to reading them, as always, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching!